Hi everyone. So today I'm going to be discussing the smallpox virus and just going over a couple things about it, how it disease process works, the infection cycle, and just some basic general information. So what are we going to discuss? Well, we're going to talk about what is smallpox, a little bit of history about smallpox, some of their invasive strategies, the disease process, cycle of infection, prevention and treatment, and some current research that's being done. So to start off with, what is smallpox? So smallpox is a very contagious disease caused by the variola virus. It is in the family of the orthopox viruses, so this puts it in the same family as monkeypox and cowpox. So a gross description of it is red fluid bumps on the skin. So that's kind of usually how you would see it when somebody has it. In terms of microscopic, this is what it looks like. Unlike some other kinds of viruses, it is DNA based instead of RNA based. So it actually has one strand of DNA that runs along the inside of it. So some history on smallpox. Smallpox-like rashes have been seen on mummies dating back as far as 3,000 years ago. The earliest written confirmation of smallpox can be seen in 4th century China. The best possible explanation as to why smallpox has spread throughout thousands of years is due to increase in civilization and trade routes. So this mass movement of people moving around was the best way to spread this very contagious disease. In the early days, on average, 3 out of 10 people who got smallpox died. A very common description of smallpox is fever with very distinctive skin rashes. So in this photo here, we can see a mummy that dates back, I believe, to Egypt. And we can see these scars on the face that are very similar to what modern day people describe as smallpox. So some of the invasive strategies. So the main way that smallpox is spread is through direct transmission. The main invasive strategy of smallpox is to enter one of the immune cells. The reason it does this is because in order for it to reproduce, it has to go into a cell in order for it to spread its DNA through that cell. But in doing so, it ends up killing that particular cell. The virulence of smallpox is very high and very contagious. The virus is also strain dependent. So depending on the strain, it depends on the severity of it. In terms of why and how the virus particularly goes to these immune cells is because, once again, it has to invade the cell in order to reproduce. So a common cell that it usually goes to are macrophages. So in this picture, we can say that this is a macrophage. You'll see how the virus binds to the receptors on the macrophage and actually ends up puncturing a hole in the plasma membrane of the macrophage and disperses the DNA within the macrophage. Not only can it do this with macrophages, but it could also do this with endothelial cells that can be seen in the liver, spleen, lymph nodes, and bone marrow. And the reason why this is a big issue is because by doing this, it's really reducing the person's immunity and can make them very susceptible to diseases. So most of the time, you're not really dying from smallpox directly. You're usually dying because of an infection that you get because of your low immune system. So some disease process is the incubation for smallpox is about 14 to 17 days. At that point, you usually do not have symptoms. The prodromal stage is the early symptoms, so this will include fever, aches, and possible vomiting. The illness period of smallpox consists of rash, sores that start on the mouth and then spread across the body. This usually happens about day 10 when the sores will become pustules. So this means that they are now starting to begin filling with fluid or pus. At the stage of decline, we begin to see the pustules form crust and then they scab. Once the convalescence stage occurs, the scabs are beginning to fall off. It is at this point that you are no longer contagious. Throughout these 3 stages, the person is contagious, incredibly contagious. So they can spread it. Even when the pustules start to crust over and even scab, they can still be contagious. It is only once the scabs are completely falling off that they are not contagious anymore. So just a life cycle of the infection. So the pathogen, once again, is the variola virus. Its main reservoir is humans. So this is a human-to-human disease. You can only get it from like a human directly. Transmission is respiratory secretions. So some portals of entry would be sneezing, coughing, or even coming in contact with droplets from an infected person's nose. And then it kind of works the same way in terms of portal of exit. So someone who would be sneezing, or even like if pustules were to burst or excrete onto, we will say like a clothing, then if somebody was to wear that set clothing that had the excreted fluid, they could also get contaminated and end up with the virus. So some prevention and treatment. So the best prevention that we know up to date is the smallpox vaccine. The smallpox vaccine was created in 1796 by Edward Jenner. Basically, the foundation of the vaccine was to use materials from people who had cowpox lesions. So since the variola virus or smallpox is in the family of the orthopox viruses, it makes them all very similar. So what he did was he basically inoculized this virus with people who had been exposed to cowpox, and found out that by doing so, he could make people more stronger or have a better immune response to the smallpox virus. To this day, the smallpox vaccine is no longer available to the public. In 1972, routine smallpox vaccines were ended. This was due to the eradication of smallpox. The current vaccine is made with a virus called Vaccina, which is another pox virus. It is a much safer version of or another safer virus that is in the same family. So it's almost similar to how Edward Jenner used cowpox to make that vaccine. This vaccine uses the Vaccina virus. So in doing this, you can become more immune to the smallpox virus. The kind of vaccine that it is a live virus. So there are a couple precautions that kind of go along with this, since it is a live virus. Some people might experience mild symptoms from this, such as rash, fever, headaches, or body aches, since it is a live vaccine. In certain groups of people, complications can occur and can be quite severe. This is one of the reasons why they don't also make it just readily available for people to get the smallpox vaccine. And then in terms of the numbers of how accurate it works, it has a 95% accuracy in terms of preventing the smallpox. In terms of when you get the vaccine, once you have the rashes and the red pustules forming on your skin, the vaccine is no longer useful. There is also enough vaccines in the United States to basically vaccinate every single person in the whole US if there was to happen to be another smallpox pandemic. There are some antiviral drugs that can help with the symptoms of smallpox, but none of them have been tested on humans. So for instance, there's a Tembexa, that is Tembexa, has been FDA approved for the treatment of smallpox, but since it has only been tested on animals, and so they know it works on animals, but we don't know 100% if it works on people or not. Since we have not had a smallpox outbreak, we don't know 100% for sure if it would work for people. And then as just disclaimer, PPE, personal protective equipment, would be highly beneficial in the case of there was a smallpox outbreak, since this is a disease that is transmitted primarily through respiratory secretions. And then so some current research that's being done. It's actually pretty interesting. It's not inadvertently being done on smallpox, but it's being done on monkeypox, but it's due to the result of eradicating these smallpox, eradicating smallpox in the population. So basically what's being done is they're showing that because of the eradication of smallpox virus, there's now an increased number of people getting monkeypox. About 70% of the world's population is no longer vaccinated for smallpox. So because these different viruses are within the same family, you have this cross immunity, which means that other orthopox viruses can infect people. So this is kind of a big deal because now that there's no longer an immunity to any kind of orthopox virus, people can become more susceptible to this newer or more recent orthopox virus, which is monkeypox. The benefit is that monkeypox is a self-limiting disease. Symptoms can usually only last up to 4 weeks. It's much less severe than smallpox and much less contagious as well. The only major difference between monkeypox and smallpox is in terms of the reservoir. For smallpox, it was humans. For monkeypox, it's animals, so this does count as a zoonotic disease. It's great because you can now use a PCR test to diagnose monkeypox in people, but the unfortunate thing is that funding is much more needed to do a lot more research to figure out newer ways to both diagnose and treat monkeypox, and as well as just other orthopox viruses. There is a approved vaccine for monkeypox, which also uses the vaccina virus as a foundation in that vaccine, which will make it a lot more safer to give with less adverse effects. And these are my references. Thank you.